Hi, my name's Random Tuesday, and in this video I'm going to talk you through my Breathe dress from the movie Ever After. First of all, it's an amazing movie. You should watch it. It's got a self-rescuing princess and this gown. I made it. I was a princess. I'm going to talk you through each of the different parts of this costume, but if you have any other questions, don't hesitate to post those in the comments section below. You can also head over to my website, randomtuesday.net, for more information, resources, tutorials, patterns, and lots of other cosplay goodness for this and many other costumes. The foundation of this cosplay is solid foundation wear. I created what I like to refer to as vaguely historical corset. Now, because I didn't need to do any waist cinching, the dress has an empire waistline. You can see the line on my corset sits right above my natural hip bone and only tapers down just a little bit at the front. So even though it's going to pull in a little bit at the waistline, it's not designed to give kind of a full hourglass figure. It is a steel bone corset made out of cotton fabric as well as a duck cotton to give it a lot of strength and stability and some interfacing between the layers. In the back, it laces together. You can find resources and information on how to make this corset on my website, as well as a pattern is available in my store. The corset serves two functions for this cosplay. It provides kind of the necessary flat bust shape to go underneath, and it also provides the stability in the back. So this is where the wings will end up sliding in. So the corset keeps them nice and cinched in and not flopping and flapping around. The other piece is the corset kind of acts as the undershirt or underlayer because a lot of this portion here is just very lacy. The vast majority of this cosplay consists of the dress, and I'm going to go into each part of the dress individually. It's made up of a lot of trims and some amount of fabric. Now, I decided already to not go with a completely film-accurate closure. It's a lot easier for me to get myself in and out of something that zips up in the back than trying to emulate their very fine lacing that they have in the movie. So even though this doesn't look quite as good or quite as historical or quite as accurate, I decided to sacrifice on that for my own sanity and ability to dress myself. The bodice of the dress is relatively simple. It is an empire waistline. So the base layer of this is a layer of a matte satin that is covered with a metallic organza satin. And there's a lot of different metallic organzas. This one is the flat and unembroidered metallic organza. So that forms the basic layer, which is essentially a very deep V bust. It sits a little bit higher in the front and then has a flat line right at the underbust that goes all the way around the back. The shoulders have a pretty wide armhole and some narrow straps about 1.5 inches wide. And then the back neckline sort of skims about 1 inch above the line of the corset, kind of creating this slightly deeper U in the back. Then it gets layered on with a whole bunch of different trims. Now, first I added this gold and white lace. I ended up doing 2 layers of 2 different kinds of lace because I found a bunch of different ones that none of them were quite right. So I layered a completely gold but less sparkly one with some white but more sparkly and used that to fill in this V section here. Then there's several trims that go around the edge. The main trim is this silver floral trim, and we'll come back to that in a second. But first, underneath goes this sort of scalloped eyelash gold trim that goes around the neckline and around the back of the neck. The silver trim then goes over the top, and this was hand stitched on. I took a trim that I found online and then ended up deconstructing it into its component leaves and flowers, and then used those pieces to reconstruct the trim so it looked a little bit more accurate. So each section is made of a set of 1 flower in the center and then 2 leaves on the outside, and those stack their way up all the way around. Now you'll notice in the back, they don't follow the back neckline. Instead, they go straight down. So in the end, the wings will sit essentially on the inside of them, and these will kind of be right at the edge of where the wings are. On the bodice itself, there's these little clusters. Now, the website everaftercostumes.com, which I've already recommended, gives you a really good diagram of what cluster is what, but they're generally made up of seed beads, silver seed beads, and a combination of a pearl, either 5 seed beads and 1 pearl, or 5 pearls and 1 seed bead, with apparently no rhyme or reason to how they are spaced out around the bodice and just on a portion of the back. In the center here, I had the bullion medallion, which I purchased as is, and then created some additional embroidered fabric medallions that are going around the outside. These sort of fill in the extra space that's in this area. And lastly, there is this silver cording trim that follows this edge of the silver floral trim that was hand stitched on as well. At the underbust, I have a row of pearl beads and a row of silver gimp trim that is stitched along the edge. The gimp trim I was able to machine stitch on, but like most of the others, the pearls were hand stitched on. And they go all the way around the back, leaving just a small gap where the zipper sits, or your lacing if you happen to go that route. The skirt is comprised of a matte satin underskirt in kind of an off-white. This was originally cut on the bias per the design on the original dress. I have some thoughts on whether or not that needs to happen. You can probably go either way. I'm actually pretty sure they did it and then didn't like it. And anyway, that brings us to the bottom hem. This bottom hem is about 4 inches, 3-4 inches tall. And as you can see, has all of these little stitch marks in it. So there is some padding in this bottom hem. It's just a piece of felt. The whole hem tucks under and then sews underneath. And I sewed, rather than French knots, I did just little tucks of hand stitching all the way along around this bottom hem. And that gives it a lot of weight and drape and allows the whole thing to kind of hang off of your hips in a really nice way. Now, the bulk of the skirt then is made up of panels of alternating embroidered metallic organza and non-embroidered crinkle organza, also metallic. Now, I decided to find something that was close, but not exactly the same as the embroidery pattern in the original design. It is possible to get a lot closer if you were to do it yourself. I had grand illusions of hand embroidering yards of fabric, and then decided I didn't hate myself that much. So instead, I purchased something that already had some silver floral embroidery on it. Now, there's a lot of beads on the actual fabric itself. Instead of doing them with beads, I ended up doing them using 3-dimensional paint. So this is 3D fabric paint in a pearl color, and I just dotted them all the way around to give the appearance from any manner of distance that they are in fact pearl beads. Saved myself a lot of time. Now, the panels alternate embroidered, crinkle, embroidered, crinkle, embroidered. So there ends up being 3 panels, one in the back, one at the side, one at the front of the embroidered, and 2 panels on the side for the crinkle fabric with 1 additional gore in the back, in between the 2 back panels of the embroidered fabric. The gore was done last. Each of these were kind of sewn together and then attached through pleating and resizing to the top. So you'll notice there are pleats in the embroidered panels in the front and the back, whereas the side panels have no pleating in them. The crinkle panels are pleated entirely underneath each of the non-embroidered panels. So it ended up being a big skirt, and the crinkle ones were pleated behind and then laid flat and attached to the bodice. Note, I did all of the attaching of the bodice and the skirt before I did any of the trims. The trims came last. So once these were attached in place, I figured out how long I wanted the hem to be all the way around, and then I created this triangle gore in the back, sort of a diamond shape that attaches right here at the zipper with a little bit of hand pleating right at the bottom of the zipper, which is attached into both the top and the skirt. Now the only other embellishment that goes on the skirt is a continuation, a variant on this silver floral trim. So these ones take the leaves and space them slightly farther apart from the flower. I then did a little connecting line using some silver embroidery thread to chain stitch the lines in between the leaves and the flower, and filled in some of the little gaps with extra bits from the trim. And the very edge is finished with the same silver cording that is on the bodice. I tried as best as possible to match them up, but sometimes it got a little bit off because it was done by hand. And the very finishing touch on the bodice and the skirt is this floral sort of section here. It's made up of the trim, has 1 flower in the center and then just 4 leaves around it. Now the way you do this silver trim might vary slightly depending on whether or not you use the same trim as I did. You can find links to all of the various trims and other fabrics and materials that I utilized on my website. The last portion of the dress is the sleeves. And we're going to just talk about one because they're thankfully identical. The sleeves are fundamentally a tube of trims. So the first part is up here. We have a puff of the embroidered crinkle fabric. Now this is about 8 inches long, and it is the width of the armhole here, and then pleated to be the width of the netting hole here. This section has a base of netting on it. It's a slightly stretchy netting, but mostly that was relevant in the bottom section. And this is the size of my bicep. And then the next piece of netting, the piece on my forearm, is connected by another puff of that metallic crinkle fabric. So I created that base with the puff, the netting, the puff, and the netting. And then I started adding trims. Now some of the trims could be done machine stitched, in which case I did them first. So here we have some peaked lace, a silver ribbon, and a gold ribbon. And those were all machine stitched on. And then a hand stitched row of this drop pearl trim. This part was done, the swirls on the armband were done before I attached the armband. So I hot glued the silver metallic trim to the fabric and then hand sewed on the bugle beads around it to kind of imitate those leaves. This trim here is the same floral trim as is on the skirt and the bodice. It's a combination of the flowers and the leaves with a line of that silver cording trim again. We have the same gimp trim here that is on the bodice and a line of hand-stitched pearl dangle trim. On the arm section, I have various sizes of gold embroidery sort of patch pieces. One of them was a deconstructed trim and the other one were smaller patches that I found as is. And then at the cuff, I have a little bit of the white and gold lace that I used on the bodice and another line of the hand-stitched on pearl dangle trim. Now, because I used a stretch lace, I didn't need this to open and close. So instead of messing around with that, I just stitched on a line of the silver cording to kind of look like it was the closure, and then hand stitched on the beads. And there's some extra rhinestones glued on here and some seed bead and clear sequin combos spaced out. There's a little triangle of them here right on the back of the hand portion, and then portions of them dotted around based on the reference images. And don't forget, a handful of rhinestones around the cuff. And then these were sewn into each of the straps so that they can help pull that puff up and give the sleeve some volume. This costume has relatively few accessories. One of the most important, though, is the shoes, because it's a Cinderella story, so you gotta have Cinderella shoes. Now, these ones were made out of a base of a clear vinyl shoe. The important part is to look for a shoe that has a clear heel on it to imitate the ones from the movie. The rest of it isn't too important as long as you can utilize it as a base. So I ended up cutting off the back of the vinyl shoe, leaving this sort of sloped slip-on shape, and then created a top covering for it out of a combination of felt and cotton fabric and the matte satin fabric to give it some nice structure and stability, but also have it match both the dress and the shoe design itself. I then added that really thin silver trim around the outside of the shoe. And the important part is, rather than trying to do the beading, again, much like the embroidery, I ended up imitating the beading using three-dimensional paint in silver and navy, and then gluing on just a lot of rhinestones. Just a lot. When in doubt, I decided to add more rhinestones, so the shoes have a lot of sparkle. Last bit was the metal design that's on the shoe here on the heel. I took a small piece of some of the trim that I had, the peaked lace, and cut out the sort of triangle shape from that, painted it silver, and then glued it directly on the heel to give the look of sort of the metal filigree that was on the shoe, and then added rhinestones. The next major part of this costume is the wings. Now, I don't know if you can tell, but the full-size wings are as wide as my arm span on when they are being worn. The wings themselves are made out of a wire base. This wire was a 12 gauge sort of fencing steel wire, with the thinner inner sections being made out of a thinner gauge 16 gauge steel wire. Wherever there was a join, I tied them with thread and then glued them to keep them nice and secure. I did wrapping of the wire at the peaks here and folding the wire all the way around the outside of the frame. The intersection is some tulle that I hand stitched on all the way around and then painted this vertical edge with gold. The U shapes here, these are where the wings attach together. So it's a U shape, this goes into the corset, and then a bend here and backwards. This section here was created by gluing first this steel rod to the wire frame, and then adding some plumber's epoxy, that metal plumber's epoxy around the edge, sanding it and spray painting it all silver. So these then slide into pockets on the corset. These wings are very large, so for conventions, I made a mini set of wings. These also slide into the back of the corset. They're made out of just the steel wire, some hand-stitched on tulle netting, and then the silver lines here were done with the silver three-dimensional paint. So they give a similar effect and appearance with still allowing me to walk through doors, which seemed important. The final portion of this costume is the wig. Now, this isn't currently styled. You can check out styling of the wig as well as the makeup for the look that I did over on a different YouTube video or on my website. The base wig is the same one I used for my Alana cosplay. This is the Epic Cosplay Skyla wig in copper red. It's a lace front wig, and so it allows me to sweep everything back and kind of pull it into a low bun, as well as have a nice center part in it. The top section, this is done as a separate piece using some wefts in the same color, and this just sort of sits on, it's pinned, tucks underneath, hidden under all of the hair. So having them as two separate pieces just makes the whole thing a little bit lighter and not quite as clunky. Thank you so much for watching this cosplay breakdown tutorial. I hope you found it helpful. If you do have any other questions, definitely head over to my website, randomtuesday.net, for lots of other cosplay resources, tutorials, and good stuff like that. Or post a comment in the questions section, comment section below. You can also check me out live on twitch.tv/randomtuesday and subscribe here to my YouTube channel for more videos and updates on things that I'm working on and other resources and tutorials. Lastly, and certainly not leastly, thank you to each and every one of my patrons who help make this video possible. If you're able to support me over there, a small monthly amount can help keep this and many other videos coming. Thank you so much for watching.